What if I told you that tipping culture is different on food delivery apps than it is on in a sit-down restaurant or any other type of establishment? I've covered this before on the channel, but I thought I would just cover it again because it does have an impact on my life personally, and I can also give some suggestions to help you out on this as well. And so, anyway, welcome back. This is Jason. Happy Friday afternoon, everyone. And I am going to express that tipping means something totally different on a delivery app than it does at a sit-down restaurant or any place else, really, for that matter. So here's how this works, okay? Tipping on delivery apps, for food delivery apps such as DoorDash or Uber Eats, is done in advance. You can't think of it like the traditional way where you tip afterwards for good service. It doesn't work that way, at least not in your favor. Now, if you treat it that way, you're going to have a very difficult time getting your food hot at all. And here's why. These apps are expecting you to cover our pay largely. They're expecting you to pay, in addition to everything that you're already paying them in terms of menu items and delivery fees and things of that nature. They're also expecting you to cover our income, basically. And how they do this is they put the advanced tip in with the delivery offer for us. So let's say you live 10 miles from the restaurant and you have are only delivering, like, let's say it's Taco Bell. Let's say you're delivering $10 worth of food. You believe that a fair tip is $2, but you live 10 miles away. Here's the thing. Base pay from the apps to drivers is usually $2 or slightly above. So that Taco Bell order that you just made, $2 base pay plus your $2 tip, we're offer $4 to make a $10 trip. And if you live where I do, you're also coming back to town empty. I live in a semi-rural exurb of the Twin Cities. And so we're getting paid $4 to drive 10 miles to drop off your food, and then another 10 miles to come back empty, because practically, when we leave town for a trip, there's no way that we're getting a delivery trip to get back, especially if you live in a rural area, like most of our market is. So your tip is not done as a after service for good service type of thing. It is done as an expected part of the package. And the apps are expecting you to tip generous enough to cover that. So what kind of a trip does it take for me to deliver your $10 Taco Bell to you? 10 miles out and 10 miles in is 20 miles total. We are typically looking for $10 a mile, or $1 per mile total overall, because the federal tax deduction is 70 cents per mile. So we are looking for $1 per mile overall, and that includes both directions on the delivery. So for that $2 trip, an $18 tip is what it takes to get us even. Otherwise, if you tip that $2 tip that you were going to give, you are going to wind up waiting a long time for food, because your trip is going to get rejected by driver after driver after driver. $18 to get the driver even. Sometimes many drivers will take a little less than that, but it's not going to be much. You still probably need to be tipping at least 10 in advance in order to even give us a shot. Now, in my particular case, as I mentioned earlier, I did get let go from my full-time job a couple weeks ago. That said, unemployment will still cover a lot of it, but the way delivery is out here, we get paid but we don't really show any profit for tax purposes. And so doing delivery typically is a tax write-off for me against my normal income. It will also work the same way against my unemployment. It's a loss leader for anybody else who has a main income, who does this part-time. If it's a driver who does this on a full-time basis, and where I live, that's almost nobody. But if there's somehow somebody who's doing it full-time, they're looking for that $20 trip on the 10 miles out and 10 miles back. The apps are expecting you to cover this. And if you don't, drivers are not going to accept it. DoorDash in particular is pretty notable for saying inside of the apps that a tip increases your chances of you getting your food delivered. But in a semi-rural market such as mine, you need to basically tip $2 a mile $2 a mile so to get one out and one back. $2 for every mile that you are away from the restaurant, which around here, 10, 15 miles out of the town is not unusual at all, because we do deliver a lot to rural and semi-rural areas. Now, if you live in the middle of a city, feel free, for the $1 a mile flat, because a lot of urban drivers can get a delivery after they drop off with you, and they can string them together. So say I'm in the middle of Minneapolis or the middle of St. Paul for some reason, which I never am. I prefer to be in my semi-rural area about 30 miles outside of either downtown. We need that tip in order to lose a bunch of money on these trips. Now, as I said before, I'm willing to take a modest loss, but that $2 tip's not going to get it done. That is too much of a loss for it to be worth our while, especially in a market like mine where we have some of the longest restaurant waits in the nation in the town where I live. I learned this in a Reddit group. We have some of the longest restaurant waits in town, so we're also looking to be compensated for the time that we're spending waiting at that Chipotle, in our case for sometimes 20, 30 minutes. Applebee's and a couple of other restaurants around here are really bad for that. So we need to be compensated for our time as well. The base pay that they pay us, that the apps do, is not enough. For that, there are many restaurants around here that I just decline outright regardless. Starbucks is one of them. Not only do we have to wait a long time, but their packaging is terrible. And I've had a lot of drinks spill in my car. I've had a lot of drinks spill on customers' porches. So I won't even pick up there at all. But I'm telling you, for that caramel mocha, you're going to need a tip heavy, $2 a mile if you're living in a exurban or semi-rural environment such as mine. So tips are not on delivery apps what they are in a traditional sense. They're an advanced enticement to get drivers to pick up your food. The higher the amount, the fresher your food's going to be. The lower it's going to be, the more likely you're going to get it cold after a dozen drivers have declined it or rejected it, or you don't even get it at all because everybody rejected it. I'm not saying this is fair. I'm not promoting this type of actions by the apps, but unfortunately, I'm just here today to tell you as it is. And so we need to be tipped generously in order to be enticed to even make the trip at all. Some of the best ones, they'll hand me cash after I make the trip. Those are always super appreciated. We love those. It's a guarantee that we'll come back and deliver to you again. There's also a practice in Uber. DoorDash doesn't have this, but Uber does. It's called tip baiting. If you elevate a tip to that level to entice a driver, Uber gives you the opportunity to remove your tip within an hour after delivery to change or reduce the tip, which results in a practice called tip baiting, where a customer will put in a high tip and then remove it after they get their food. Do not do this. Drivers talk to each other. You will get a reputation very quickly. And people will take down where you live, and they'll see that if your address is the drop-off point, you'll be rejected by everybody eventually. And you basically will be unofficially blacklisted from the Uber platform from ordering, not because the app's blocking you. They'll still let you do it and let you pay it. It's just that nobody will deliver for you. Because as I said, drivers talk. And so you need to understand that that's how it works. Again, I don't endorse this. I wish the apps were to pay a sufficient amount to cover expenses, mileage and expenses, which the federal, as I said, the IRS does it at about 70 cents per mile as a tax write-off. But if we got paid that outright by the apps, these problems wouldn't exist. Everybody would get their food, because then you would get your money. Drivers would get their money for their expenses plus whatever the base pay and plus the tip that you give, and there would no longer be a case of having to only accept in the case of an escalated tip. Now, the solution for this is pretty simple. I'm sure you've heard it before. If you don't want to be participating in this particular scheme, get it yourself. I get it myself all the time. I live in town. But these apps, in addition to needing you to pay driver compensation for the large part, they also don't pay the drivers the expenses for the mileage. They also charge rather exorbitant fees. Take a look at your next order sometime. You'll see it on the receipt what the delivery charge is. That's not a delivery charge for the driver. That's a delivery charge for Uber or for DoorDash. They get that money. We don't. Now, a portion of that will go to us in the form of the base pay. But otherwise we don't get anything from your order at all, straight up. So that exorbitant base fee, delivery fee that you get charged, if you pick up the food yourself, you don't have to worry about getting charged that. You don't have to worry about tipping a driver. You can actually order through the apps for carryout. I strongly recommend this if that's the restaurant's preferred way of taking carryout orders, being through the app. I'm a regular at Jersey Mike's. You can order pickup within that app and not have it go through the delivery apps. You can also do it with Applebee's, some of the other larger chains. Some of the local restaurants though do take their carryout orders through the apps, but you don't get charged a pickup fee in that case. The menu item might cost a small amount, a tiny markup more that way, but you're not going to get hit with delivery fees if you get it yourself. So therefore, as I do this myself, that's my recommendation for you too. Pick it up yourself. Save all that money. For that 2 for $26 order at Applebee's, sometimes you will get charged for the delivery in the app pre-tip up to $50. That 2 for $26 is actually 2 for $26 plus tax in the Applebee's app as carryout, or even Carside to Go, where you can drive up, pull up into a parking spot, and they'll drop it in your car for you. You just tip that person in the Applebee's app in that case. But you don't have to worry about supplementing anybody's delivery expenses. It's all taken care of for you at a much, much, much lower cost than if you order through the DoorDash app for delivery. So there it is. Tipping, the meaning of tipping is completely turned on its head within delivery apps. And my tips for either addressing not getting your food delivered at all, or addressing the exorbitant cost of using that service. As I said before, I don't use the service. I don't get my food delivered. There's just no reason to if you can go get it yourself. Anyhow, that's it for the Friday doubleheader. I'll see you again tomorrow. Probably back to the political track, but I just wanted to cover this real quick. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out, homies.